Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Medeco. This is their part number 32-5475. I have a little bit of trouble focusing on that. There we go. 32-5475 and a 26 and a Z01. This would be their 32 series, which means it's a standard, what they would say, a Yale type of compatibility when it comes to the the large format interchangeable core. So what's in the box is a really long mortise cylinder housing. It's a mortise cylinder housing is what this is, not a mortise cylinder. It's a mortise cylinder housing, and it's a 32 series versus the 31 series. Different approach to how that's done, and it is a 6-pin, and it is a 1 3/4 inch length mortise cylinder. The underside of the head to the back of the cam, 1 3/4 inch. Yeah, it's about a 30-second heavy on that, but nonetheless, underside of the head to the back of the cam is 1 3/4 inch, and then this is in a 2/6 finish. And we'll talk about Medeco finishes in a moment. This will also include a trim ring, should you need that. This is really a ring that you'd see on a rim cylinder, most likely. But nonetheless, it does include a cylinder collar, I would probably say. Let's talk about where exactly you're going to use this cylinder. So a mortise cylinder housing is going to be a really typical piece of equipment. This has their Z01 cam, which is going to be just considered likely a standard cam. So we can start to guess as to where we would use this based on the cam type and the length of the cylinder. The cam type, a standard cam, is going to be for applications where you have really old mortise locks is where I see standard cams. Mortise locks that are 100 years old, they'll take a standard cam. Other items that take standard cams would be alarm bypass units like an exit devices or key switches. When it comes to lock sets specifically, using a standard cam is not really typical and common in modern lock sets. So for me, there's a bit of guesswork involved here with what exactly they're actuating with a standard cam based on the length of the cylinder. 1 3/4 is really long for this. You might, frankly, here's an application, may not be unusual. You've got a door that's 100 years old, and for some reason they need a mortise housing because you've got a door that's 3.5 inch thick, something in that range. You know, I'm not saying that 1 3/4 is perfect in length, but you have an unusual door thickness. Or you might have a unusual door thickness that's slightly off center as well with that old style mortise lock. You know, there's a lot of applications where you get into needing an unusual mortise cylinder housing. One that I encountered recently was almost a one-off key switch, even though it's not one-off, but it's for a particular application for a big box store that needs to stick a key into a cylinder so that they can open and close the circuit to an overhead door. And they don't want anyone to be able to open that overhead door without the manager's key being inserted. That application took a very unusual combination of mortise cylinder. It was an unusual length. It was a highly modified cam. So where you're going to get into end up using this, you know, there's probably lots of places. But in terms of it being a straightforward mortise lock or an auxiliary mortise, like a small case deadbolt, you know, any sort of aluminum storefront, that's going to be unusual, I think, with a standard cam. Somewhere there's a standard cam required, and here it is. Now this is in the 26 finish. That is, that is satin chrome. An interesting thing that Medeco does, as does at least two other companies I can think of, they use the BHMA code, but only the last 2 digits. So if someone says, I need 26 finish, we're kind of going to automatically think the US finish, US 26, which is polished chrome. But no, Medeco uses those last 2 digits because in BHMA, 626 is satin chrome over brass. So they're using those last 2 digits. So if you needed polished chrome, you'd have to call it 25, because BHMA for polished chrome would be 625. Now, this is the 32 series. That means that it's going to take a particular large format core, and that this is for 6-pin. We will look at the catalog shortly where you can see all of the other available Mortise cylinder housing. So why don't we switch to the screen view now and take a closer look at that information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, here is our cylinder in the site. Let's take a look at some photographs that we have. There's the label. Standard Yale, large format interchangeable core. It's a 5475, it's a 32 series, 5475, and a satin chrome and a Z01, which is Yale, they'll call it. But that Medeco is going to fit in there. Because Medeco and Yale will take the same housing. An image showing what's in the box. This is a really expensive Mortise cylinder housing. But when you're dealing with high security, the entire product line is not inexpensive. Looking down into the prep, a cross section that's 1 5/32 of an inch diameter, 32 threads per inch, which means ultra fine. Z01 cam on the back that looks to be convertible. Very handy. Yeah, you should be able to take that driver that's there, remove those screws. Really interesting, this cap that's on the back of this. That would certainly be considered a security provision. You wouldn't be able to get a tool back into the back of the keyway to work on manipulating that broaching in the cylinder plug. There's your trim ring, or your collar, and then another view looking down into it, and then the box. This is what it looks like when it comes. Now, below this video, there's a link to the manufacturer's page. Before we get to that, Mortise cylinder housing, 1 3/4, 6-pin, large format, less core. It's got the Z01 cam and sold as each. When you buy one, we'll ship you one. Let's click on that link to the manufacturer's page, and when that opens up, we will be able to open up we'll be able to get to the catalog. I already have it open. I've got it open to the Medeco finish chart. Doesn't mean that you can get all of these finishes on every product that they make, but here is their master finish chart. So we're dealing with this 26, which would be US 26D or satin chrome. So be mindful of that, a little tricky. So just think BHMA, the last 2 digits, and then you're good. Like 10, don't think satin brass, because that would be 612 over here. Oh, I'm sorry, I said satin brass. Don't think US 10 for this. That would be 612 in BHMA, which is 12 satin bronze. Anyway, I think you get the picture. 05, 06. So you don't have to worry about memorizing it. There is a link to this document on this manufacturer's page. Now we can get over to the catalog and view the page where this Mortise cylinder housing is found. And this is really the price list, so you're not going to typically encounter a price list. So this is a 32-5475. So we've got a 32-5400 here. You can do them either pinned or sub-assembled. Sub-assembled means there's just no springs, no driver pins, no bottom pins, no keys, no combinating at all. Not only are there no keys, but there's no parts inside the cylinder, the cores, for you to do that. That would be very typical if you were sending the material to a facility that had the platform in place and they were doing their own internal locksmithing, or it was being sent to a locksmith and who was going to do it. So here's your 32-5475. 1 3/4 Mortise cylinder housing for the 32-5400. And buried in the 5400 is going to be your length, 1 3/4. Yeah, don't count it. No, 7.5 is not 1 3/4. Yeah, I'm not seeing any logic to their part numbers. Refer to the documentation before you guess on a part number. You'll note that there is no 7-pin version, which is typical in Medeco systems. But just to clarify, what's interesting in the way that they have the 32 series, that's the Medeco platform of interchangeable core. So if it's a 32 series, it's going to take a Medeco core. Now, the reference to Yale is not a Yale core. The reference to Yale is the cam that's on the back. This would be very commonly called a Yale cam, or I had referred to it as a standard cam. If you needed a Yale mortise cylinder housing from Medeco, you would order a 31 series. And that'll take an actual Yale large format interchangeable core. The prep for the Medeco is right here in this sidewall, and that makes it a 32 series. What's also interesting is the 32 series is UL 437 listed, which is the highest caliber of rating for pick resistance, drill resistance, attack resistance, corrosive environment resistance, things of that nature. So the 32 series is going to take your Medeco cores, and other series from Medeco would take other manufacturers' cores as well. Now, what Medeco does is they offer cores that will fit in other manufacturers' housings. So they make a 31 and a 32 series housing, but then they make cores that you can put into other manufacturers' housing. So let's say that you have an existing Corbin Russwin system, and ownership has decided to migrate to Medeco. You can migrate to Medeco most likely in the keying platform or keying technology that you want, and retain all of your existing Corbin Russwin mortise or cylinder housings, rim, mortise, etc. So that's what Medeco does. The list of their materials here, etc. Rim cylinder housings can be seen in here. Well, let's wrap up this video on camera and talk about a few closing details. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Now, a few final details would be, I have been told or have heard that Medeco by far is the dominant high-security cylinder manufacturer for North America, something to the tune of 75% of all of the domestic market for high-security cylinders is a Medeco installation. I'm a little surprised as to it being so high above majority, but I can get there understanding that the folks at tech support at Medeco are exceptional. They're always extremely kind, always extremely knowledgeable, always get you the absolute answer. They're true experts in the field, and Medeco is a very complex system in the sense of, if you're approaching it from a flat-footed position, it will seem quite overwhelming. There's not just lots of documentation that's available about the nuances of a Medeco system, and it's really a journey of learning how to combine the system. You wouldn't approach doing any of that unless you were in the business or industry of, combining Medeco cylinders. If you're a casual user, you're just going to have your locksmith or someone provide that material to you, because the investment to be able to combine Medeco is not insignificant in time nor in fortune. But their tech support is truly amazing. Their part numbers aren't always obvious in the catalog in terms of what it is exactly that you're looking at. If you are going to approach having to combine Medeco, I would very much recommend that you consider joining Aloha and then taking their high security cylinder classes that will give you so much insider information that is just not readily available, it would prove to be invaluable. The Medeco system is highly complex in the way by which they achieve their standards, their goals, what they're able to provide to the market. You know, they can have a million changes over a single cylinder, and it's the nuanced way that they approach getting to that number is extremely fascinating and complex. And like I had said earlier, some of the kindest people in tech support. There's an article that I wrote for the industry magazine keynotes. It's titled "The Most Famous People No One Has Ever Heard Of," and it's my story about encountering someone from Medeco, someone seriously important in the evolution of Medeco technology, that it wasn't till months later that I realized who it was that I was having a conversation with. So you may want to look that up. Any questions on the Medeco 32 series in a 5475 configuration, or any other Medeco product, please feel free to reach out to us. It just dawned on me that we might want to look at different cams from Medeco. Yeah, so before I really wrap this up, Corbin Russwin, Yale, or the standard cam, Adams Wright, really old Kiel Norwalk type, those are old locks. Schlage, medium Yale, they've got a shorter version of the Yale, which I know is used in some Adams Wright, a couple of Adams Wright applications. Siegel, Lockwood, Corbin Russwin, an offset Siegel, which is probably that might be for the inside cylinder of a 687, maybe, their rim deadbolt. That might be what it's for. I think that does take an offset cam. Corbin Russwin Master Ring, night deposit lock applications, General Lock, Sargent again, Ruco, I've never heard of Ruco, Falcon, Schlage, Mogul locks, 2-inch cylinders, Yale post 1982, the skinny Yale, Dominion, Corbin Russwin, again, Jumbo, a different one apparently, different years of the Yale medium, post 1982, Medeco residential, Falcon type, the Corbin Russwin Clover style, a hook type, more Mogul, Best, Marks, Vincard, Falcon again, Sargent Mogul. So there's got to be 24 cams that are there, and that's also in the catalog. So be mindful when you're speccing your mortise cylinder, it's mortise cylinder housing, your part number, your length, your trim rings or collars, whatever you need there. Actually, it should be your cam, your trim rings, your collars, your finish, your handing if that's necessary. If you have a hotel cylinder, that would be necessary for handing, your finish, and then Medeco. Any questions on this or any other Medeco product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.